welcome to This is Public Broadcasting. I'm your host, Captain Rutledge. It's October once again, folks. Time for spooks, ghouls, and goblins. And most especially, ghosts. Now, this month, I'd like to focus on a very special, friendly ghost. Actually, I was thinking of none other than Ghostwriter. Created by Liz Nealon and produced by the Children's Television Workshop and BBC Television, Ghostwriter is a show about a group of kids from Brooklyn, New York, who uncover mysteries and solve crimes with the help of Ghostwriter, a ghost who can only communicate through the written word. The show originally aired on PBS between 1992 and 1995, as well as on BBC Two in the United Kingdom. The 90s. Clothes were big and horrendously colored. The humble governor of Arkansas made it to the highest office in the land, and Seinfeld was TV number one. Oh, Cap, got something crazy to tell you. Not now, Kessler. Okay. After only airing for 3 seasons on PBS, Ghostwriter is often overlooked in the catalog of great children's programs on the channel. So, today, we're going to give it the spotlight it so rightfully deserves. So, get out your case books because we're about to go undercover in Ghostwriter. With children's television on the rise during the 80s and 90s, average student reading and writing test scores in the United States began to slump, especially among Black and Hispanic students. In 1991, the Children's Television Workshop, the powerhouse behind shows like Sesame Street and The Electric Company, announced a new show in the works to help improve reading and writing scores among American youth. Former MTV International Vice President Liz Nealon created a rough draft for a new TV show aimed at 7 to 10-year-olds called The Ghostwriter, where 6 children would go on adventures with a ghost who can only communicate through writing. Nealon's background with MTV would incorporate more visual and musical techniques into the show, along with using a diverse cast of children in the main roles. The show was set to air in 1992, with $5 million in funding from Nike, one of the largest single corporate donations for a children's television show up to that point. Okay, so $5 million, adjusted for inflation, comes out to almost $10 million in today's money. Helping Nealon produce the series was Miranda Berry, who had previously worked behind the scenes on other CTW shows like Sesame Street. While Nealon worked on the show design, Berry put together a writing team consisting of head writers Kermit Frazier and Karen Greenberg Baker, along with 5 other writers to give authenticity to the diverse cast of characters. Berry, Nealon, and the writers met up to go over show ideas and began brainstorming the character of Ghostwriter. Originally, Ghostwriter was going to be the spirit of a famous Elizabethan writer. No, not that one. Take your pick. Eventually, as the show team began further brainstorming for the show, they came up with the idea of Ghostwriter being the ghost of a slave who taught other enslaved people to read and write, but was tracked down and killed by slave hunters sometime before the American Civil War. They also wrote down certain rules, such as Ghostwriter only being able to recognize letters and numbers, not a person's appearance, voice, or even gender. For the main child actors, the Ghostwriter team did casting calls at Boys and Girls Clubs, Scouts, and the Y for young actors that would be believable on screen. Sheldon Turnipseed was cast as Jamal Jenkins, the show's central character and the one who originally discovers Ghostwriter. Blaze Baradol played Lenny Frazier, an aspiring singer and songwriter. David Lopez was cast as Alex Fernandez, Lenny's Salvadorian neighbor and mystery buff, with Maytina Morales as his younger sister Gabby. Tramon Tran was cast as Tina Nguyen, Gabby's Vietnamese classmate and aspiring filmmaker. And Todd Alexander Cohen was cast as Rob Baker, a new student at Zora Neale Hurston Middle School who enjoys writing poetry but is rather shy. Other children who showed up to casting calls were used as background extras during school and outdoor scenes throughout the series. Rounding out the cast was The Cosby Show's Marcella Lowry as Jamal's grandmother, C.C. Jenkins. Filming took place in the Fort Greene and Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhoods of Brooklyn, New York, along with studio scenes filmed around 116th Street and between Lexington and 3rd Avenue. To pitch the show to PBS, a pilot episode arc was created, filmed at Tribeca Studios, with appearances by Growing Pains star Jeremy Miller, and guess who plays Jamal's dad?
Your grandma said you were coming right home after school. Where you been?
Oh my God! So you're Sam L. Jackson!
So the pilot went over well, and the BBC offered to pick up the show for broadcast overseas. In October of 1992, Ghostwriter finally hit the screens of PBS with the 5-part arc Ghost Story. This story introduces most of the main cast, with Ghostwriter appearing to Jamal, Lenny, Alex, and Gabby as they try to find out the identity of a gang of backpack snatchers. This was later followed by the original pilot, Who Burned Mr. Brinker's Store, where Ghostwriter appears to Tina and Craig, played by Jeremy Miller, as the gang looks for the culprit behind a suspected arson at Mr. Brinker's video store, with Jamal as a suspect and Mr. Brinker having run-ins with the FBI. After Who Burned Mr. Brinker's Store, Craig never appeared again, and Samuel L. Jackson was too famous to appear again, and was replaced by Dean Irby as Jamal's dad.
Say what?
However, one character from the pilot who did manage to stick around was Lieutenant McQuaid, played by Mike Hodge. The next story arc, To Catch a Creep, had the Ghostwriter team looking for a student at Zora Neale Hurston trying to sabotage Alex's campaign for class president. With help from the new student Rob, who later joins the Ghostwriter team, the gang narrows it down to probably the show's most detested character, Calvin Ferguson.
You were always bragging about how are you going to run for president. Always so sure you'd win. I couldn't just let you run my school, now could I?
No! Jeez! You're a creep!
Later stories of the first season would include the gang going on a comic book scavenger hunt, helping Rob locate his friend Double T, uncovering a veteran actress's stalker, seeking out the culprit of illegal waste dumping, and even proving a former gang member's innocence after a series of school vandalisms. The show also started including hot-button issues in its storylines. We learned that Rob's friend Double T was a veteran of the Vietnam War, and he suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder affecting his home life and leaving him living on the streets. When the local community garden is contaminated with barrels of tetrachloroethylene, or PERC, we see the devastating side effects of the pollution on the community, as well as being tactful in bringing the culprit to light. And then, the season finale deals with the gang violence and racism. The first season handled these issues respectfully, tactfully, and without beating around the bush. An excellent piece of work for children's television. Also, there was that one scene of Alex and Tina.
No matter what happens to us, at least we're together.
Aw, ain't love grand?
Yeah.
After the success of Season 1, Season 2 hit the airwaves in September of 1993, with 7 new story arcs and some new faces for the main cast. Rob would leave the team after Lost in Brooklyn, moving with his family to Australia, but the Ghostwriter team would receive new members in the form of Alex's Puerto Rican mentee, Hector Carrero, and Jamal's younger cousin, Casey Austin. Ghostwriter also travels through time to meet the original occupants of Jamal's house, Frank Flynn and Catherine and Lucy Kennellan. The Ghostwriter team gets new cases, including a rough patch after Mr. Fernandez and Mr. Frazier get into a legal battle that Creep of Creeps, Calvin Ferguson, tries to split up the Ghostwriter team for good.
What'd you have in mind?
There's so much we could do with Ghostwriter helping us. We could send him to read test answers for us. He could write book reports for us. Why, we could get straight A's without lifting a finger.
Go away! We're having a good time until you showed up, jeepers!
We see Ghostwriter travel back in time to ensure Jamal's future. Tina helps her new friend find her brother in Brooklyn. The team uncovers a hacker in the school computer systems. And Lenny and the gang star in a music video, and Alex has to help a friend going through drug addiction. Just like Season 1, Season 2 covered more hot-button issues during its run. The story arc Who is Max Mouse jumped onto the birth of the World Wide Web during the mid-90s, along with the emergence of internet hackers doing their worst to everybody online. We learn the devastating side effects of hacking into the school's computers, and both Jamal and Lenny's reputations are in jeopardy while trying to uncover the hacker's identity. Also, Calvin is still a creep.
A date with Lenny Frazier? Ew, it is Calvin Ferguson with his gross dead red parry.
Go have some coffee with cream or something, because I'll tell you something. This is a happy place.
Ghostwriter was a 90s show, and as everybody knows, all 90s shows need a drug episode. The season finale, What's Up with Alex, sees a number of locker break-ins and property thefts at school, while Alex learns that his new friend is using marijuana. Things get tense between Alex and his family, but thanks to Gabby, Jamal, and the rest of the Ghostwriter team, Alex is able to resist the temptation to partake in 90s after-school drug culture, and his friend is given the help he so desperately needs. Unlike other 90s drug PSA episodes, this episode does not talk down to viewers or become overly preachy, but behaves practically and relatably. Could have been far worse. They could have hired this guy.
From what I've heard, you're using your paper not for writing, but for rolling doobies.
Remember how I mentioned BBC Two playing a part in Ghostwriter production? Well, Season 3 makes that partnership more evident with its premiere episode, A Crime in Two Cities. While vacationing in London with his family, Jamal meets Sam and Becky Wentwood, whose family runs the B&B the Jenkins are staying at. Sam and Becky become the new overseas members of the Ghostwriter team and help the gang back in Brooklyn solve a kidnapping plot involving the son of a famous author. In many ways, A Crime in Two Cities feels like a holdover from Season 2. Maytina Morales would leave the show after this episode and be replaced by Melissa Gonzalez as Gabby, and the show would receive a new opening sequence featuring Gonzalez, as well as William Hernandez and Latika Vinson. What's more, Season 3 saw the writing start to go downhill from the previous two seasons. The previous two seasons may have had one or two overhand antagonists, but Season 3 had villains who cracked the craziness up to 11. For example, 4 Days of the Cockatoo featured an evil taxidermist and his evil Master of Disguise henchwoman being tracked down by the EPA's two most bumbling agents. It gets even more insane when the evil taxidermist explains his motives.
When I was 9, I accompanied my mother and father on a trip to a bird sanctuary, when suddenly a bird smashed into the windshield of our car, causing father to lose control of the wheel and crash.
Dropped the piano on his head.
I was the only one who lived.
This episode isn't all bad, though. We do learn about endangered species and the impact of poachers on wildlife. And also, Calvin doesn't act like a complete detestable creep for a few minutes. But on the whole, this episode is probably the weakest in the whole Ghostwriter lineup. And then there's the show's final episode, the one most 90s PBS kids remember and still have bedwetting nightmares about. Attack of the Slime Monster features Jamal's cousin, Casey, entering a scary story contest revolving around her new creepy bubblegum shooting toy, Gooey Gus. The Ghostwriter team assists her in writing it, and what starts out as a pretty campy episode, I'll admit, gets pretty intense and somewhat disturbing as Gooey Gus transforms and attempts to entrap the whole Ghostwriter team in bubblegum. Chucky ain't got nothin' on this demonic doll. Even more unsettling is how Gooey Gus seems to be fully sentient in the team's real-life exploits. As if I'm scared of a toy.
Laughing at me? You laughing at me?
Who said that? Any other Season 3 exploits? I'm afraid not. You see, Ghostwriter was not a cheap show to produce, and funding from Nike slowly depleted as the show progressed. Whatever funding could be obtained to maintain the show was just not enough, and Ghostwriter left the airwaves before receiving its proper finale. By this time, the Ghostwriter cast was moving on with school and daily life. Sheldon Turnipseed, Maytina Morales, and Todd Alexander all went on to attend New York University. Blaze Birdahl attended Bucknell University and currently works as a narrator and voice actor. Tryman Tran graduated from Penn State and maintains a social media presence through her Instagram blog, Pop Kids Pics. William Hernandez, Melissa Gonzalez, and David Lopez are still active in the entertainment industry with bit parts in various movies, TV shows, and video games. Latika Vinson graduated from Hampton University and currently works as a speech pathologist in the Los Angeles area. And as for the two women who started it all, both Liz Nealon and Miranda Berry are still involved in children's media today. In 1997, CBS followed up the original Ghostwriter with a new series, The New Ghostwriter Mysteries. Only one season was made, and it was soon canceled due to low ratings. Heck, it had barely anything to do with the original series to begin with. A few tie-in novels were created, along with a 2006 radio program produced by the BBC. In 2019, Sinking Ship Entertainment, the folks behind the PBS Kids show Odd Squad, created a revival of Ghostwriter with Sesame Workshop for the Apple TV Plus streaming service. Rather than teaching reading and writing skills, the new Ghostwriter is more focused on introducing children to classic works of literature, and Ghostwriter himself releases characters from books to aid in this discovery. Although the show had little to do with its original source material, it was well received by both critics and audiences, and can currently be viewed on Apple TV Plus.
Super cool.
You have no idea.
As for the impact of the original Ghostwriter series, as the 90s progressed, American children's reading test scores began to steadily improve. Whether Ghostwriter was the main driving force behind this can't quite be certain. However, the show was conceived in order to help children realize the importance of reading and improved writing skills, along with developing deductive reasoning skills through fun-to-follow mysteries. It's a shame Ghostwriter did not receive the full run it deserved, but for what we got, we can be grateful for the fun, mystery, and adventure with a group of meddling kids and their writing ghost. Episodes of Ghostwriter can be viewed on YouTube, as well as a revival series on Apple TV+. So, moving on, it's time once again for the PBS Member Station Spotlight. Okay, so we've been going all over with these station spotlights, and it's time once again to pull a new name out of the pretty straw hat. So, let's see who we get today. Gotta hold one here. Well, it's down to Missouri with Ozarks Public Television. The flagship station for Ozarks Public Television is KOZK Springfield. Before 1974, PBS programming in the Ozarks was broadcast by various commercial stations in the region. In 1974, Springfield Community Television obtained the funding and an FCC license for a public TV station, first hitting the airwaves in 1975. In 1986, KOZJ Joplin was set up as a sister station to the currently operating KOZK Springfield, providing PBS programming to southwest Missouri. In 2001, KOZK operations moved from Drury College to Strong Hall in Missouri State University, and in 2009 the stations moved to full digital broadcasting. In 2018, tragedy struck when the KOZK transmission tower collapsed during maintenance, resulting in the death of one worker and the hospitalization of 3 others. Programming had to be relayed through optic and cable transmission until operations moved to the KY3 tower in Fordland that summer. Today, Ozarks Public Television offers PBS programming to southwest Missouri, southeast Kansas, northwest Arkansas, and the far northeast of Oklahoma. Programming for Ozarks Public Television includes local shows such as Ozarks Watch, Video Magazine, Sense of Community, and a whole slew of documentaries. If you are in the Ozarks, you can tune in to Ozarks Public Television on these stations, with PBS Kids on the .2 channel, Create on the .3 channel, and World on the .4 channel. Well, thank you to everyone for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, feel free to like, subscribe, and share, ring the bell, follow on Twitter, and also don't forget to support your local PBS stations. Some more programming related to Ghostwriter can find its way to your television screens. And I suppose that wraps it up, so in the meantime, I'm Captain Rutledge, and someone's at the door. Strange. I think the show's starting to get to me somehow. I mean, right now I was at the door. At the moment, I just thought I saw...
Hello, Captain. Loss of words, I see. Perfect. Now who's laughing at me? Now who's laughing at me?